let me know. Mm,
Is it the same link or is it a different link? The live on YouTube.
Oh no, it's gonna be now live section. Oh, sorry. Hold on 1 second.
What is it?
Oh, did I just stop the live? Oh no, the live is still on. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I was hearing an echo, Annie, because I had the live on at the same time with the thing. So it's in the same YouTube channel. It's
Uh-huh.
not the same link as the broadcast because now it's an actual live, and so people will go on to the live tab. Um,
Okay.
which I had some, yeah,
Okay.
instructions in the thingy as well. So, I'll be sharing out the link to some of our pages as well, so folks can find it later. But welcome to the Hmong Women Lead 2025 live discussion panel. Unfortunately, Sandra couldn't be here with us today, but we have Mindy and we have Annie, our other great presenters as well, talking about some things. And so, if you have any questions, go ahead and just write that up in the chat, um, and we will get to you. If you want to go and reach out to any of our speakers privately, all the information is on their contact information is on the program through www.momwomanly.com. Um, and throughout the chat during the live as well, and again on the program. So, what this is, it's really just a live discussion, just going into our presentations a little bit deeper and really talking about topics that are happening around us in our work, and really just digging a little bit deeper into what we're going to talk about today. We've got some general panel questions and then some speaker specific follow-up questions as well. So what I'm just going to do is just read off the questions and then we'll just have a discussion starting with the general panel questions and then after that go into one of the some of the speaker specific follow-up questions. So one of the first questions is what inspired you to speak on your topic today, and what do you hope the audience takes away from it?
Annie, would you like to go first?
Sure, sure, I can go first. Okay, let me just come to my body right now because I was a little bit distracted earlier. And then every time when I'm gonna talk, I do a lot of talking, but I'm still going through that phase of like, oh, right. So let me just calibrate a little bit and come to the presence. It is such an honor to be here, especially being with sisters who I have been on this journey, whether it's through collaborations and or sitting in circle with Yemi and then Mindy. I feel home, being here. Of course, I'm at home, and I'm also feeling very connected being with you too. Okay, so what inspired me to decide to talk about circle to system? Because I believe in circle. In the beginning, it was just something I do on the side to. It's almost kind of like my self-care time, right? My monthly therapy that I do with other women. But then through it all, I started to pick up the values and the way that I show up in circle and how I can how it helped me to show up as a leader, as a mother, as a wife at home. And I start to think about how that can show up um, and systems. And if we bring it and implement it in the real world, what kind of world can we create? And as you all know, there's a lot of things in the world today that we feel is unjust, right? That it doesn't support us. It's not correct for us. Um, and so I wanted to share with my community and whoever hears this message to come experience Circle, to see how we practice in Circle. On my talk, I talked a lot about how we learn to listen deeply, how we learn to share openly. Sharing is scary, right? Because we live in a society where it's not safe to uh, talk openly, right? Because of judgments, because of shame, right? And so, like Mindy said, there's secrecy. There are certain things in our lives where it's not supposed to be shared. And in Circle, we believe that sharing is healing. And so those are just a very few things that I can think of right now, but I make a long list on my videos, right? On how Circle can heal us, how it can help us to return to our wholeness, how it is an act of resistance to patriarchy. Again, in the beginning, it's just something I do to come back to my voice, to come back to myself. But the deeper that I look at it, it is a new way of being and doing in the world that will bring us back to wholeness, to healing, to true community, to true sisterhood. Because when we heal ourselves, we heal each other, we heal our family, our community. And that's why I wanted to share with my community about the word of circle.
Oh, thanks for
And
sharing, Annie. I was gonna say I participated in my first circle last year at Bow Women Lead with you, and I just yeah, and I think that it was so healing because I'm gonna speak for all of us that was there, but all these women that I met, I continue to see them, especially when I go to Minnesota, and we are like sisters. Like we just met one time for the first time in Denver for Hmong Women Lead, and I go to Minnesota, and like when we see each other, we find each other, and we know each other, and we just love on each other, and it's so healing. And it doesn't matter where we came from, what we know, like our experience or whatever it is, all that goes away. We just look forward to just being with each other. Yeah, I was just in Minnesota last weekend and I saw some of them, and yeah, we just look for each other, like, and folks that didn't know who we were, they thought we had known each other for so many years. And I'm like, oh no, we just met one time, or this is like the second or third time only. And they're like, wow, you guys seem like you guys know each other for so long. And it's just that connection was amazing.
yeah, because circle is um, in circle, we believe that another woman is just a reflection of who we are, right? And so through our interaction with them, we get to see a different side of us, whether it's similarity or differences, but we also get to acknowledge that that is a difference that exists within all of us, right? And so we really learn to let go of this. We learn to embrace each other as allies, right? That we're together, and not just that. Like when you sit in circle, even though we don't name it, but eventually you're gonna realize we share the same enemy, and that is patriarchy. Yeah. And I think that right there, that's why it brought us so close without even having to be close. Even though I do things that bring us really close together. We do like sister train, we do like the massage, we do the support each other. Those are some of the little things that um reminds us that that is what we pray for, right? But at the same time, it's also, you know, something for us to go back and remember and practicing again. Now, again, one more point that I wanted to add to why circle and why Hmong women or women in general, right? Or why this community. It's because I believe in the power of a sisterhood, the power of women coming together. I believe and I see the opportunity and the power that and the influence that we have when we come together as women. There's so much power in the way that we get to model, we get to influence. As women, we influence through our as mothers, as sisters, as wives, as leaders, right? As aunties, as role models. And because of that, when we invest in women, we really invest in the next generation. And so if we're talking about all of these wounds out there, right? Sister wound, mother wound, system wound, all of that wound out there, you know, we when we believe that we can change that, started from us, then we invest in us, and that is why my work center around women.
Oh, thank you guys. And I just want to say, Annie, that you're kind of like the I was thinking about cookies, right? You can't make cookies without the main ingredient, which is, flour and sugar to make it taste good and actually become a cookie. I think your circles are kind of like that main ingredient. I think a lot of spaces were really, really good, but I feel like something is unique and different about yours too, where like what Mindy had said, I see it as well, where women that's only met each other for the first time through your specific circle, they're able to connect on such a deep level and then continue that. Um, Months, years, down the road. And yeah, it's just a testimony to the work that you do. So thank you for doing it. It's special, it's unique. And for those of you who are watching and has not done it yet, you need to do a circle with Annie. You need to bring her in and be able to go ahead and do this transformational sisterhood circle with Annie, which is amazing. Um, so Sendra's not here, but again, if you guys are coming in and want to speak to Dr. Sandra Yang, um, her information is in the program, and you can email her or contact her directly. Um, some of the things that inspired me to speak on my topic today is really what I've gone through. A lot of people, when they first meet me, they don't know that I am a domestic violence and suicide survivor because I'm running around doing things. I'm very ambitious, and I'm always laughing or making. Okay, I make jokes, but usually they're just inside jokes and they're only funny to me. So, but I'm always joking around and laughing. And when people find out, they're just like, "What? I never really thought about that." And so, um lived experience became I was always taught that I had to have like some sort of really high degree or do this or do that in order for me to even be considered valid when I spoke about something. I remember I was about 16 years old, not even graduated from high school yet, and I wanted to write a story about my grandpa's experience with the war. And I remember I shared that with people whom I thought were friends, right? Family members. And the first thing that they said was, wow, you are so conceited to think that someone like you who doesn't even have a degree should be able to write a book. Like, who do you think you are? And I, these were coming from people who I thought had good intentions for me. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, you're right. Maybe I don't have the credentials to be able to write a book or, do something. And so, he passed away and I never was really able to go ahead and put any of that, in a book. And so, fast forward, all these years later and, um, all the hardships that I went through, um, And then finally finding mentors, that actually sat down with me and said, no, what you've gone through, your experience and everything, you're actually, that's valid and that's what's needed. And um, I remembered being, invited to spaces and asking, not even just me too, but I met a whole bunch of other people like me as well that were um, really just used to just kind of put in a space to just make it show that, there's an Asian woman in the room or something. And it kind of got to the point where I started really reflecting on who I was, how I wanted to show up, what was I really doing in those spaces, um, and decided that, what, my lived experience, what I went through, everything that somebody else has gone through. I even had a lot of conversations with my mom, to where I thought I had it ingrained deeply in me that I had to have a degree. A lot of older women, that I spoke to, beyond my mom as well, had the idea of, oh, we don't really, we don't have a degree, so we aren't like, credible enough to do all that stuff. But, you know, um, a lot of the stuff that they know, a lot of the stuff that they do, pretty sure you guys know as well as I do, is they're very talented in a lot of things. And when they speak, it's very, it's they're motivational speakers and they just don't they don't know it. Because they were taught that you have to have like a certain degree and like be in media or something like that in order for you to actually have that platform to speak. Um uh and with Seeds for Hope recently, an organization that you guys are a part of, recently just did their storytelling summit, which is just an amazing contribution to the idea that lived experience is valid. Lived experience can contribute to the studies of culture, and humanities. And so that's kind of where I kind of came from with my lived experience, my topic. I thought that if I thought like that, my mom thought like that, and a lot of other older Hmong women thought like that, then maybe someone else might be thinking the same way too. And for them to be able to hear that, yes, your lived experience is valid. um, Having a degree is great, but it's not required for your lived experience to be able to be considered something to be able to go ahead and move someone in the right direction. So yeah, so that was me. And then the next question here that we can go into is, how do you define resilience? We talk about resilience a lot, but how do you define it in your personal or professional journey, specifically as a Hmong woman?
I'll take this one. I have a very different perspective on resilience. I feel like resilience is we often say, "Oh, this person is so much resilient. Oh, you're so resilient." But really, like um, from like a clinician's perspective, I look at it as it's a band aid. They're so strong, right, and they can move through this. They're so resilient. But that resilient is it's a band aid that you throw on something, and then when something happens, it triggers, right? It comes back, comes back around, and so I define resilient as, uh, a space and time in which you can be strong. But really, how to move forward, even personally or professionally, is really through uh, processing, you know, your lived experience, what that is. Whether that and when we're talking about resiliency, we're talking about a period of time when you may have experienced trauma or an experience where it was out of your control. And so to me, we talk a lot about resilient, but I want us to also be aware that just because someone is resilient does not mean that they are shield or they're protected or they can't get hurt. you know um, Again, I think of it as a band-aid that you put on something, and it's really to heal from that is to what you and Annie both talked about, like women's circles, the wounds that we need to address and process and heal, or through storytelling, through finding connections and learning and growing from that, and healing from that rather than just moving forward, right? Like persevering, which is something that as like always like like we just handle it like um right? Like and that they call that resiliency, but to me it's like it's a band-aid. And so again, I personally think that I'm glad that I think all of us, especially in my line of work working with kids, they're so resilient. But I'm always mindful that that is just a band-aid, and so we can't expect that that will carry that band-aid, right, will stay there forever and and be that like their identity of like they've moved past that. And that we need to also be just mindful that um, when something triggers, we don't know what would happen, and so how do we support that person? Because it really shapes. You talked about what inspired you to speak about what you do, and then to me, it's really um, our experiences shape the outcome of our future. You know, and that is why I do the work that I do, because um, yeah, what I experienced today, especially when you're a child, it really shapes the way you think and feel about the world and yourself. So it's important that as adults in this world, um, that we provide that support and services. Dr. Sandra Yang talked a lot about mental health, um, and so that's really how I define resiliency.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I would like to add that to me, resilience is, I with Mindy, that it's not just about enduring, okay? It's not about that you hang so you it's not just about surviving, but it's also self-trust, right? That we develop within ourselves through all the hardships and experiences through that we trust ourselves enough to find ways to pass whatever is coming our way. It's an attitude. Okay, to me, it's an attitude, and it's a belief that things doesn't have to be the way it is now. That it's not supporting us, right? That we don't have to settle for that. And but to that together, let's find ways on how to navigate this, right? And so it's an attitude to me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, everyone. That was very powerful. Appreciate that. I think, Mindy, I like the way that you started out saying, what you see as resilience, right? Because I think resiliency now is taking on a different form. I think in a lot of us nowadays, I think resiliency used to be ooh, right? We just kind of endured. It just kind of like we just kind of have to deal with this. Um, but I think now we're seeing that there's uh, good parts of resiliency, and then there's the bad parts. And thank you for bringing up the idea of children. I hear that a lot, especially when I was going through my own situation with my children, and all of our mental health needs. Was the number one thing I kept hearing providers say is, "Oh, children are so resilient." But I'm like, but in my mind, I'm like, but yeah, but I'm not just gonna put them through all these crazy changes just because you think that they're going to bounce back really quickly. And I'm like, if we can avoid it, shouldn't we? And so, and like you said, some people do just kind of put it down as a blanket statement of, oh, like, children resiliency, or like, oh, you're resilient, you can bounce back. And it's, and if we've learned with materials in this world, every time something gets, stretched, whether it's a balloon, time, or anything like that, it when it goes back, it's not really back to its original shape or form. It's always something a little bit different, right? And so, no, thank you for sharing that. And then I'm going to go and move on to some other questions here, and then go into our specific speaker follow-up questions too. Um, One of the things, if you guys are open to sharing, is what are some of the challenges that you faced navigating healing within our Hmong culture, and how did you overcome them? And then from that challenge, if you can tell your younger self one thing about leadership or healing, what what would it have been?
I think I could. I think some of the challenges is that for me personally, um, is the ability to, coming growing up in a large Hmong family. Now, yeah, you do everything for each other. You don't turn your back on each other. Um, there's this saying, like 有个馍，有个馍，这个馍呢，有，有个寂寞嘅，因為你寂寞呢，有，like you always, like, in Hmong families, I always give, like 個寂寞嘅嘢啦, I give you some, there's always that thing, and like no matter what happens, your family, you stick together. And I think that one of the challenges that I face in healing is, there are some cultural patriarchy. Annie talked about that, within our culture that is very dysfunctional, very toxic to families. And I, most recently had a death in my family where, and I'm raising my own child. And there are just some generational practices that I don't want it to pass on to my family or to my son. And I've had to pick and choose my Hmong family or my son and how I want to raise my son. There are some patriarchy practices that I don't want him to ever see or inherit or know about. And I made a really tough decision to heal me and and to prevent that generational trauma from passing down, to separate from my family, not leave them, but have boundaries, very strong boundaries. And that was one of the hardest things that I have ever overcame. And the passing of my nephew. And so some of my other nieces and nephew felt really like that I wasn't there. And that was really hurtful. But I also knew that mentally it was for me, that boundaries, I needed to build it. And I was scrolling through TikTok, and there was this reel that said, um, I remember that aunt and uncle that one day they kind of just left the family. And I've always wondered why. And as I've gotten older, I realized that they left because of some of the toxic traits within this family. And they didn't leave because they didn't love. They didn't leave because they wanted better or they thought they were better. They left, some of these dysfunction family practices because they had to get their family out. And I was talking to my sister a little bit about that. And I was just bawling, but I was thinking that, like, I hope that one day, by what I did, is that my nieces and nephews, right, that generation as it goes down, that they'll realize that that it was just me saving all of us, and then maybe starting with my son first. And so that was really, really hard. Um, but I continue to make sure, that I have a relationship with my siblings and my family. But there is just boundaries that I've set very clear, um, just because I know that I don't want that to be passed on to my family. And so, like, if there's one thing I can tell my younger self, one thing about leadership or healing, I think I'm going to go with healing, is that it's okay to let go. And letting go doesn't mean you don't love. Letting go doesn't mean you lose. Letting go doesn't mean that you've lost something. And I was talking to Annie about this. I'm like, I'm having midlife crisis, um, and it's, Annie had reminded me, like, it's not like I'm losing something. When something doesn't serve you, you don't have to feel guilty about it. You move on. And so I would say, that healing within the culture is really hard because I know that my family, my nieces and nephews probably felt like I don't value family in that way, but I did so much that I had to put that boundary up.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. Man,
Oh, sorry, my internet just stopped for a second there. Okay. I think I'm back. And then I'm assuming that you said go ahead, right?
We missed what you said, Annie.
contribute to this one as well. And I really like this question. I would also love to hear from our audience as well. You know, what's to you, and whether it's through your own experience or observation, what are some of the challenges when it comes to healing within our culture? So to me, I can go in many different directions. Bear with me if I'm all over, but what comes to mind, the first thing is this. Now, healing in our community, usually we tend to go to the spiritual part, right? One name, yeah, okay, one name, but and then I'm not sure, right? And like that, yeah. Um, depending on how you're raised, right? Yeah, that's the first thing they go to. But healing has many like different aspects, different parts, right? Different, and that we have to take care. So that's what I have to say, right? Is that sometimes we think healing is just one component. Because whenever I post something about healing, you know, I get comments from especially the elders, like heal please, right? That's very important. But that's just one aspect of it, right? Then now doing so, I learned that it's, you know, we are the best tool for healing ourselves. Okay. Because we also experience and code our stories, or because people or three people can experience the same and have different outcome from that experience, right? Because we code differently. And so you have to go back and look at how you code it and then face it. So what is it? It means that you need that, for me, is that I'm able to name it, verbalize it, identify how it made me feel, and share it, be witnessed by people. Healing power and just being witnessed by other people. Again, these are the practice of circle, right? But unfortunately, in our culture, the barrier is that we, one, don't know how to even verbalize our experience. We all, that's one challenge there. Two, because of the fear-based and shame-based culture or society. I don't want to say, because they jump on me when they hear the word culture. They think our culture, but the way that we have been doing, right? Um, being shy because you're behind. You know, sometimes we have to name names, not even name names. We have to, you know, it involves people too, right? When it comes to our hurt experience, and then like we feel that, feel betrayed or betrayal, so we can't openly share a lot. We can't be honest. That's the thing. It's hard to be honest. You cannot be honest about your pain, whatever you're going through. It's harder to really release, to heal. So the more that you can go deeper and name it what it is, the faster that you are able to just you know, like dissolve it. But in our society, we have been taught not to be vulnerable. You're too openly, right? And so then that's the challenge. Okay. Sharing is healing, but sharing is hard because we don't trust. With fear of judgment and backlash from our family, right? There's a real story of from our story summit, storytelling summit, where one of the participant now is wanted to withdraw her story because family now saying, you know, it's not appropriate or whatever, right? Again, that fear base is still there. that's the challenge, is that it's not safe. It's not safe for us to share. So it's harder to really heal. But in circle, we create, safety. We create psychological safety where we can go there. When we can go there, name it, release it, be witness. That's how, one of the ways that we heal. And not just that, like, yeah, again, what I learned now is that we are our best because we frame those experiences through sharing and reprocessing it is how we can reframe our experience, an empowering one, into one that is with one and guide us and help other people. So that now see healing, and I hope that I answered all over. But again, I address some of the challenges that we still face, and I still, it's hard for people to trust. It's hard for people to be honest. But those that come with me through circle over and over and a long time, really be safe and just go there and speak however you feel in the moment, right? The more that you can do that, the more you can release it. um, and the sooner that you can release it, then the lighter you.
No, thank you both for sharing your perspectives. And I think something that I've always heard too, and I think you guys had both brought it up. You guys had both brought it up in your explanations. There is that um, culture doesn't always have to stay exactly where it's at, right? You're not less Hmong because you decided to go ahead and leave a couple things behind. Um, and I think it's very true of what you said too, Mindy, where it's the reality of nowadays too, right? And what you're saying too, Andy, is that we do have the power of choice now. It's we have the power to go ahead and do that. We have the choice to go ahead and make those decisions for ourselves and our family. It's unfortunate to hear that, one of the participants, are feeling that way. It's, it's a great thing to share your story and, because it brings to the forefront, right? Um, a lot of things. It's kind of like a light that shines into a room. Now you can see a little bit more of what's going on, whether it's yourself or others. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think one of the biggest things that I always had um, someone not some well it was more than one person but quite a few folks and other people talk about how they would be either shamed or made fun of that they weren't Hmong anymore, right? If they didn't follow those traditional very strict patriarchal rules or gender norms or gender rules that now they're becoming more of like this like race or that race or whatever. And so it's kind of like you start, and that for me actually started back in middle school. And kids, I mean, we were kids at that time and we were already talking about how if you didn't do this and you're not part of the culture, and so that sense of belonging just kind of started going out the window. And I think that's where a lot of the Mindy, you were talking about a midlife crisis, identity crisis, for me, like, growing up with folks saying those things too. Um, and then one more, then we'll go on to the speaker specific follow-up questions. Um, what does it look like to lead with courage in spaces that weren't built for us? And since you both went first, I'll go ahead and start off with this question here is so what does it look like to lead with courage in spaces that were built for us? To be honest, it's kind of scary, at the beginning because I remember one mentor had told me, so when you start doing this work, you might want to go ahead and start seeing if there's other people that will work with you because you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And it's easier to pick you off if you stick out like a sore thumb. And I remember thinking, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb and I'm going to be picked off. I was like, what? And so, and there was a lot of truth in what, this person had told me too, but I think that was one of the first things was I had to, it was something that I knew that I wanted to do, something um, that I needed to do, wanted to do, but I was really scared. And I think one of the things that really helped me out was having folks who already had started the processes or has gone through something similar or had done other similar work who had to deal um with that with maybe the threats or anything like that. I remember my parents telling me that, some of the work that they did, it was they talked about it like it was just so normal that, other family members or other like, folks would call them and say, if you don't stop what we're doing, like, you better watch out, like, or, you should, cursing them to die or hoping like, or even threatening them that, they would come after them, like, if they didn't stop supporting whoever or doing this. And so, and then I remember when I first started doing it too, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos from other Hmong women who was starting some of the work in domestic violence. And a lot of them was like, yeah, you have to be very careful. Um, there's a lot of angry people out there. And so at first I started rethinking what I wanted to go and do. And I was like, man, it's like something that I want to talk about, something that we need resources for our community. Because at that time, law enforcement agencies and other folks were like, hey, we kind of want to know a little bit more about your culture and how we can help out with the domestic violence and with those who are attempting suicide, but we're not really too sure about the mental health in your community since you guys are pretty quiet, especially here in Colorado. And I was just like, okay, let me go ahead and take a shot at this and get my support system ready. And I think it was that support system that really made a difference. And then along the lines, like, meeting folks like you guys, meeting folks like Dr. Cinder Yang, and then the Mom Woman Lead, I think that was a big eye opener, not just for everybody else said that it was eye opening for them too, but it was a big eye opener for me too, because at first I thought, okay, this is what a community led, community surveys, like, they've been wanting to go ahead and do this for a little while. But when it happened, it was more of the professionals that came out. And I've never been in a room with so many Hmong women who were in the mental health field and already on the groundwork doing all this kind of stuff too. And it just really solidified and really just encouraged me with a lot of the work that we're continuing to do. But yeah, that's how I um try to lead with courage in spaces, is trying to find that support where I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mindy, do you want to go with this one or you want me to respond?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, thank you. So, leading with courage. So, this really first requires that you know your truth, you know yourself enough, you know your values enough. That way, when you realize that the system or the space that you are a part of doesn't support you or is not designed for you. So as I'm thinking about the systems or the space, I'm thinking about my workplace. I'm thinking about my family setting sometimes, events, gatherings, or even like funerals, right? The way that certain things are run, that I feel like, or even like Hmong New Year, when I see all the guys up on the stage, even your funny, is that we are brave enough to say something, right? And it doesn't have to be mean. It could just be a comment and say, that doesn't look very equitable, right? Or I don't know about this. It doesn't feel like it reflects, this and whatever that is, inclusivity, um, free expression, choices, whatever it is, the values that you you know that system also care about, right? So, like workplace, like sometimes I'll be like, in meetings or even with the big boss, if something feels like um it's too rigid or it's too one way, I will feel like I'm not sure about this. It doesn't feel like there's room for me to express, or I don't feel safe to share right now. I don't know why. Say something, and then and then go deeper into that. And I think very important, not just you knowing your values and your worth, but always know that you belong. If you are in that space, you belong in that space. You are the co-creator of that space as well, right? And so is taught what do you, because when we just let it be, we allow that to continue, right? So to have courage in spaces that aren't built for us is that we claim and we own that space, um as well, that I belong there, that I'm a co-creator of this space. If I'm here, this is not what I want, I need to say something about it, right? Whether it's just, does it resonate with you or the shared values, or what? um this way people can start to see, yeah, in the beginning, yeah, they don't like you. You're not going to be liked, but that is how we bring things to the surface, so that we can talk about it. And even though sometimes talking about it looks like friction, looks like arguing sometimes to some people, because even though it's just talking, can look like arguing to some people. But that's how we can really bring the truth up, so that we can work through whatever that differences is, so that we can find ways to make changes, right? And so speak up even if you are afraid, right? So um and of course we look at what what we have control over, what we can do something about. If you can, go ahead and do it, but if not, what else can you do, right? For me is through circle, right? Because I can't change my workplace. I say when I want to say and I need to say. I won't like silence myself, but I can also expect people to just change either, right? But I want to say enough so that they know, Miss Lee is this way. So that, because when you do, people will respect you. They're not going to like you in the beginning, but they will respect you the next time when they do something. They're going to know that's how she feels about it. Let's talk to her first, right? And the things that you have no control over, and you want to recreate something else, go and do that. Whether it's an organization, whether it's at home, right? How you want to raise your children, how you want to build your relationship with the people you have influence over, start from there. For me, it's through circle, right? It's through circle that I create space for all of us to come and be heard, be seen, to heal, so that we find our voice, so that each of us can go out there and also be that force for good and force for change. So you focus on what you can control. But also don't just settle, don't just say, oh, that's the way it is. To have courage is to say something, even if it's not a popular opinion.
That is so true. When I think of courage, I think about like you're in China, and you have to find that courage um, to not even make difficult decisions, but to stand up for your beliefs, to stand up against opposition, right? Yeah, you yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think Amy and Annie and a lot of folks know me enough. I will tell you how it is. And sometimes I have to pull back a little. But I think I show up, not I think, I show up with courage in these spaces that are not built for me, because they're not built for us. And I am going to make sure that there's a space for you. Because if there's a space for you, then there's a space for us. And so I have always lead in a way where, Annie talks a lot about like co-creation and celebration, is that with at Seeds for Hope, or even at my workplace when I mentor, and guide folks, I always make sure that I lift them higher than I am, because the part of leading with courage is by um, demonstrating and also by inspiring others, so that they, if I can do a little, then they can do a little, and then I do push a little, and I always want them. I always say I want you to be better and bigger than I am, because I I want to create that space. And so being vulnerable is another big piece that I lead by. I talk a lot about feelings. One thing that I have been doing for the past couple of years is really uh, verbalizing my appreciation and love and support for others, because it leads through courage. Because as Banya Hmong, as Hmong people, we don't really talk much. The expectation is that Annie's older, so I know she's got my back, and that's kind of like, I know she'll never, but, or Mindy's older, Mindy Paoja, like, but I actually verbalize it. We have a really young mentor that I saw in Minnesota, and I make sure to let her know that you are not only an inspiration to your rising leader, you are an inspiration to your big Seeds for Hope sisters, um, because it gives them that space then to lead with courage. It doesn't matter where they're at. And so when I lead through spaces, I try really hard to um, create that space for them and be that role model. And because I am very loud, I know they're not going to be as loud as me. But if I'm that loud and I give them a little space, I hope that they can go further than me. Um, and so yeah, it's and I know, like, in some, I work in places where I am, the only Asian person. People will tell me, like, didn't you just get out of like college or something? And I'm like, I'm as old as you. And so I know that these spaces, and if you guys don't know, I do, I work in investigations, and so it's like a field where not Hmong people will go into. And I do sex assault investigations, and so it's just not a space for a lot of women, and not a space for a Hmong woman, and not a space for someone young. And then I'm also a social worker, so everything is just so opposite for me to be in a space, and I know I don't belong. But I go in, and I I joke, but when I go in meetings, I'm very loud. I make sure they all know who I am. But then at the end of the meetings, for the next 6 months, they won't hear from me. But when I'm in their space, I talk to everyone, and I make sure they know who I am. And it's because if I don't, then I will always stay small. Um, and it's just my way, and works the same way in a Hmong community. I was telling Amy, I was at the Hmong New Year, and you know I was representing Seeds for Hope, and I was asking for money, and I said, you know uh thọ乜嘢把俾人猜個就透露出點解出門有俾人猜. And a lot of old men came by, and I was like, what you do like in a joking way. I like to joke a lot, and so sometimes use a little bit of my charisma to get their attention. But creating that space that we can have this conversation, there's truth to it. I don't want you old men going down there. I need some money, but having that conversation, and it opens the door uh, to at least like plant some seeds, or let them know, like, this is where Seeds for Hope is. This is our platform. Support us. Even if you don't, now you know that we exist. And we will, we work for our sisters in Laos. And so I do force myself a little into those spaces, but that's my personality, not a lot of others. And so what I like to do is, like, yeah, create those spaces and help those around me go a little forward, because they might be a little softer than me, but it gets them through the door.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing. No, I think that is so important because I think that's naming it out loud, right?
Mhm.
Is that could just be the only thing that could even make a big difference. Talking about patriarchy, talking about um, older men, taking advantage of situations like that. And so really just speaking it out and speaking the direct truth, and then allowing that to kind of settle and sit in with people, right? And like you said, Annie, it's so true. They may not like you, but they in the back of their head, now they know that that's your
Mhm.
boundary. And I think that's very important, especially for Hmong women. I think one of the things that a lot of us are starting to learn as we get older, but a lot of the folks nowadays too, is boundaries, right? That it's okay to have them. It's
Mhm.
normal, they're healthy. And that's how you're able to go ahead and gain um, respect for yourself as well. Now, to go into some of the speaker specific follow-up questions. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start off with you really quick, Annie. Um, some of the things that you mentioned earlier, I kind of want to go into a little bit more. Um, because I think we've all felt it one way or another. I know that have come to you asking for advice and wisdom in this as well. But how can we start rebuilding trust among Hmong women where the sister wound runs deep, right? And then how does that healing look through sisterhood, like in practice or like, not just in theory? And if you want to share a little bit more about what like what when you say Hmong woman and sister wound definitions, and just kind of like how I feel like that is a discussion that comes up a lot, even with me personally too. Like I remember um thinking back now, it was, I mean, it's kind of like the chicken and egg. Like we don't the history of everything, with Hmong culture, but at the end of the day, it was a lot more sister wounds that I had
Mhm.
throughout my journey with domestic violence as well. So,
Mhm. So, sister wound is one of my core topics, right? And it's also something I experienced that really motivated me or gave me a purpose to pursue circle work even deeper. So, sister wound is it's a heartbreak that we experience with another woman. It could even be with our moms, you know, our own sisters, or just another woman. Um, growing up, I in my younger self, I was very competitive. I always wanted to win. I wanted to be the one to have the last say. 我反倒是了，有啥个？我还差了啦。I'm not even getting anything out of it, but that sense of competition is always there. I don't know why, right? I always compare myself to other people quietly without even like wanting to acknowledge that I was. And it took me a long time to realize that it was the way that we were brought up. And if you go deeper and deeper and deeper, it's going back to patriarchy, right? So the way that I was brought up was Gunia, the way she inspired me to be better, to be a better, woman, a young girl, is to compare me to others. Look at so and so, right? So think about how you were being raised. Have you been compared, right? Um, and so that's those subtle ways that you develop the comparison and competition. And so it's the way that we were brought up. And not just that, patriarchy taught us that you gotta be better in a lot of things, be at the top, right? Be more beautiful, be smarter, right? So these kind of expectations creates this sense of competition and comparison, right? It's like you gotta keep up. Right. And so again, it's the culture overall. It's not just Hmong culture, it's cross culture, right? And so how do I rebuild trust? It's just to recognize that what we experience is a symptom of a deeper problem that is not just between me and the sister or the woman that I had a experience or an issue with, right? It's not just that incident. It's way deeper than that, right? And so, of course, I went through building friendship, sisterhood, and then experience betrayal, especially with those that are really close to you. You feel like you nurture them, you mentor them, and suddenly they turn, you feel like they turn on you. Of course, I wanted to say I feel that way because that's my experience, but it could be the other way around. If you hear her story, it could be the other way around, that I turn on her, right? But my perception is that she turned on me, right? And so then I frame it as, that sister wound that I experienced, that I was betrayed. In the beginning, of course, it hurt. I didn't want to open up again. I'm like, I'm doing all of this for free. I don't feel appreciated. I don't want to give anymore, and I want to close my heart, right? I'm like, I'm just gonna do my own thing. I don't want to do like woman stuff anymore. You want to withdraw, you want to run away, you want to close your heart, you don't want to give anymore, right? But how you heal is to recognize that this is the effect of patriarchy. That in order to dismantle that, is that we need to see as a sign, and then look at how can we first heal, right? Heal your heart. Heal your heart again, and reframe it, and see this as the barrier that is going to prevent us from trusting each other, coming together, really collaborating, and having this bigger vision that when we're together, we're stronger, we're better together. Without this anchoring you, it's hard to heal. Okay, have all of this bigger vision. You know that whatever you're going through is an experience you're going through, and that you have to work through that. Acknowledge it, share it with someone, right? And heal your heart, take care of your heart, heal your heart, and say, there's more work here to do. And we need to talk more about it. We need to, heal each other, right? Like, let me share with you. Because when I started sharing, OMG, so many other also say, me too. I experienced the same thing again, because we were all impacted by patriarchy, right? This need to be better, younger, polygamy, right? The practice of polygamy taught us that you got to be younger, prettier in order to find a man. You got to be better cook, right? Blah, blah, all of that stuff. And if you don't fit any of those stuff, you're not enough, right? And so all of that, make us feel like we got to compete, right? Because I have this attitude where, oh, watch me, you know? And so I become really good at other things like games or competition or playing sports. I want to win, even though it's just a game. 我办到死了，我讲差中差 what for? We get the same thing. And so that kind of attitude only repel people from us. It makes us feel less connected, just more lonely, right? And it's not the kind of world I want to live. I've been there, right? And so anyway, going back to what's the question again? Healing, right? Is that we have a space where we can come and talk about it without judgment, that we feel safe enough to go there and say, this is how I feel. And recognize that there's a bigger vision. There's more work ahead of us. We got to heal ourselves so that we can heal our family. We don't pass it on to our daughters, right? And that we can stop the cycle right here, right now.
That's crazy, Annie. I was in Minnesota, and I went to the Saints for Hope story telling summit, and I met one of the storyteller, and she was talking about her experience, growing up as Iduntai in a very abusive household. And there was 4 of us that was sitting by her. And I was looking at her, and you talk about patriarchy. And I remember I told her, I go, I listened to you. Like we all can relate to each other, and patriarchy is we all, were raised by the same grandma and grandpa because it just shaped us all. Like any story, her story is so personal to her, but all three of us that were listening took parts of it and were able to be like, oh my gosh, like we see it, we feel it, we know exactly what it is. And I was like, man, like because that was how we were raised. No matter, but think about it, like, right, Annie, like, I don't think your family lineage has ever met mine in France or anything, but the way how culture has created our upbringing and our Hmong family is so similar, you know?
Absolutely. I talked to women from other parts of the country, Vietnam, China, Laos, Thailand, and I don't have to know them. I don't even have to grow up with them. When you share story, the pattern is there. We all share the same, story, just slightly different, but the pattern is the
Wow.
same, right? Yeah. Um, Yemi also asked, what does sisterhood look like in practice, right? And not just in theory. So, sisterhood uh, uh, is listening deeply, right? Allowing the other sister to be, right? Um, uh, that movie, The Wicked of the Witch. I love how she say, "Oh, that's a choice." I'm learning from her. It's like that's a choice. Instead of no, don't be like that. You're gonna look stupid. You're gonna look awkward. It's ooh, that's a choice. Is that we allow people to show up the way they are, right? However, when it's toxic, right? When is a perpetuation of uh, harmful practices, then we keep them accountable. So it's not about just giving people a free pass. It's about standing strong that there's this vision of equitable world we want to create, a fair, a healing, right? A safe community. And that when all of those values are, you know, uh, not, if we're not moving towards that, we need to be able to call each other's out and lovingly without having to blame and shame them, but to say, hey, whatever needs to be said, say it, and don't just give them a free pass. I think a lot of time we misunderstood sisterhood as, oh yeah, yeah, you pick me, right? And like I'm go. I mean, it looks good in like movies and in story, but you don't cover up with someone when you know that they are wrong. You keep them accountable. You invite them to explore alternative practices, right? To change. And if they're not willing to, they're not yet ready to, it's okay that, you depart away from them. You part way from them. It's okay. It doesn't mean that, oh, 主要sister, yeah, because that's how you're going to allow it to continue, right? But it's to say, hey, your journey ends here, right? For now. And that, we have work to do over here. And when you're ready, right, then you can come back. And so I think that's what I wanted to say about sisterhood. It's deep listening, allowing people to show up as they are without judgment. Listen more than like being quick to lecture or give them advice to fix them. Because if we continue to fix people, people don't they forget the power to, like come back to themselves because we're always telling them what they need to do, right? And we don't like to be told what to do. Now, some people do really need to, they feel like they need to be told what to do because they feel like, if you don't tell me what I need to do, I don't know what to do. But then when you do, they will continue to rely on you. And so when you honor them, you believe that they have the power and the resources to, and you're just going to guide them, right? And you will be there to support them and guide them, witness them, and let them like find their own courage because we have different faith in our life. And you have to allow them to go through those phases in order to be strong enough to get to their destiny, right? And so that's why we don't like lecture people too fast or give people advice too soon. I know that in our culture, the way that we're being helpful to people is by telling them what they should do. But sometimes especially for me, the kind of person that I am, when you do that, I don't feel that you see me and you hurt me, right? And so I don't feel safe. I won't come back to you, right? And so I know that, when we do have experience and we have wisdom and we want to share, we can invite them, right? Say, are you open to, right? Ask for permission. And if they say yes, then you can. Because if they're not ready to, and you start giving them tips, even if you give them the key and they're not ready to, they won't even know how, or they won't even grab it. So you got to make sure that they're ready for the message, the wisdom, the key. And so sisterhood means that you meet people where they are, allow them to be who they are, listen more than being quick to fix, and keep each other accountable.
Oh, thank you so much. That's um, what I really wanted to be able to go ahead and talk about and bring to the surface too. More to come on this subject, I know,
Yeah.
because it's something that is really, really needed in our communities too. And now I'm going to go and shift over to Mindy for some questions for you, Mindy. Um, now, we're for Let's Talk Taboo, your series. And last year was the first time, I think ever, that it was um, made into a public, at large workshop and session in the topics that you discuss. Um, and so, one of the first questions that I want to go ahead and ask you, since you've already talked about some of the myths and misunderstandings, um, I want to go ahead and go a little bit deeper about um, the Hmong culture and what do you think, or does Hmong culture make it hard for women and children to protect themselves from men?
Yeah, and this is I'm probably gonna it's because English is my second language, and so like my brain has to shift from like Hmong to English. So when I speak to English, it's a lot often about what it looks like. And so I think for Hmong Panya and Minyo Yona, it's it goes back to patriarchy. And it makes it hard for like the Tyler to king na yero ko how it no to see luta ho na yo. And then you have the father figure, and then you have the grandpa. And so really the tu mo te ming lo chi cho chính nên cho lo hai cho te ming na yo. So um you know for example, women, their role is to 我一零年我那我好都民 right 我的我的nepal right, and then you had to chính một khứ sang giáo to chính anh nhớ lo một tế mình chỉ to chính take care to nhiều giàu right, even uh mình sai mình tu right to cần đỡ lo chế tuần sai cần đỡ lo chế lo and so uh in a Hmong culture, we have very specific gender roles. And so, and you always hear you right? You don't speak more than your brother, even if your brother is younger than you. Or I'm sorry, even if your brother is older than you have more chores than your older brother. I mean, yeah, your older brother as a younger sister. And so I think culturally, as ito pa ni itong Thai, we 被寂寞 guy na ya. And so the tumor actually um, even like for example, my family, my mom and my dad were divorced for a very long time. So my older brother, Lucy, in the man of the family, even though he's just a couple of years older than me. And so it's always like, and so I think that puts those gender roles and expectations put women and children, girls, daughters at risk for being more susceptible to child sexual abuse. The other thing with it is that you hear all the time, like even in cases where 东菜莫名原來有你看你年那有，哎你年真菜你年，等下個字包嘢個字莫一樣零多，you know 個字包嘢個字要幾樣零，it's always like the funniest fault when something doesn't go well or 我家個度都咁簡單哩，哎個人個都要借嘢個字係個度都。Right? It's like, it's always like that. And then when it becomes a big problem where, you know, có plan nhiều lot ho lo có yêu bông cần đó ye mà mua kê đâu có gì, right? Like, and then because when they tell dad, then dad takes care of everything. And the way dad takes care of it is through this patriarchy system of how we solve problems in a Hmong culture is through clans, right? 就只能都是谈的有，都把谈的把蒙样的把蒙恨的那样，and then it becomes this discussion of what these elders want, what they expect from the other side, right? Whether it's 唔到了下地台，了your colleague but it makes it easier when it's two different clans going head to head because you know you have your clan and the other clan, but when we're talking about intrafamilial sexual abuse, and you know I was thinking about this when I was doing a presentation. So research shows that 60% of perpetrators are men, and this is, you know, in the United States as a whole. But I got thinking to in a Hmong community, you know, and just thinking about men and women sexually abused in a Hmong community, sexually abusing children, is I believe that there's a higher percentage of Hmong male sexually abusing children than Hmong women, higher than 60%, the average of what the United States is. And so when it becomes a nuclear family issue, right? Now we're not talking about Jane Mong Yato or Jane Mong Ha, right? We're talking about go zi or dun cai or du zinza or dun cai or du law or dun cai or du yo or dun cai, right? We're talking about sexual abuse. That is very shaming to let anyone outside of that nuclear family know, right? You don't want your Nishandao to know. And so what happens is, you know, the secret that you keep within. How do you blow, right? Bây giờ mong này, right? Bây giờ blow cái li uli nó. Bây giờ cho cái một hai li uli nó. Bây giờ cho cái một tờ câu gì saying. Well, you can't when it's your own issue, internal family problems. So what do? They keep it internal and la hai do, you know, first they protect the family, right? It's because we're a collectivist culture too. So you did you hai name, you j name. And then you also have on the other side of that is that right? The bad person isn't the perpetrator, it's the one that was perpetrated on. Because if you think about it, if she's not a virgin, if she's not pure, who wants to marry her? And so there's just culturally, historically, it makes it really difficult for Hmong women and daughters, girls, females in particularly, to protect themselves. And then you also think about like, right, bride napping. You know, women are property. If you know, there's a huge debate, and there's even a book about this, about the dowry. What does that mean? And I'm very glad that we talk a lot about it because we can change the significance of what a dowry is. But if you do the literal interpretation of it, is, you know, or even Hmong people say, right? Like, oh gosh, I can't say that word anymore, but it's like, right? That all the money and time that they use to raise their daughter, now the daughter's going to go into another family. And so, it could be two interpretation. If you look at more cultural practices, it could be one is that these are all the money and time that I used to raise my daughter, and you pay me back, or it's the dowry is, good. You pay us the dowry so that you can keep that promise that you're going to love our daughter, right? So there's a lot of different interpretation to it, and I am hopeful that we can shift and change the language of what the dowry means. I don't think it's negative. I think it's the way some people think about it, and the way they say it is negative. And so I think it does make it very susceptible for Hmong women and children to protect themselves, and make them more susceptible to being victims of sexual abuse. And then you have this whole cultural piece where, bong mo saving face, right? Um, and then there's just so many different external factors that play into it that at the end of the day, the victim is left to be blamed for it. Um, well, why did you open the door? Why did you this? Why did you do that? And it's like, and as a Thai, right? And as a Hmong wife, you can't be young dao, right? You can't speak much, and so it, it really just shuts them down, and so it's sad. It's very sad, um, and the truth of the matter is that that is again stems down from ito po ito yung patriarchy and shaping how how it plays out today, what sexual abuse look like within the Hmong community.
No, thank you for sharing that, Mindy. And one thing I wanted to add to that too is churches are not exempt, right? And
Absolutely.
so yeah, we're talking a lot about clans, but I want to like our viewers and other listeners to hear this too, is that um the same situation happens in a lot of Hmong churches. I grew up with one, since I was like 11, and have, multiple friends and family and other several Hmong churches too. But the idea is the same. It's just the rules are just applied a little bit more differently. Now it's not traditional stuff like that's happening. It's more of like, oh, this is what the Bible says, but then it's totally taken out of context and used as sort of that extra layer on top of that cultural context if they were still, following in traditional ways of, and then adding on that additional layer on top as well. And you go from clan leaders, right, to um, the men who are running the church, right, the chair of the church, like it's like a similar uh, format, like a similar hierarchy, but now you're in a more religious context, and there is such a thing as religious abuse as well, that adds on again to that layer of that sexual abuse that happens, or where men would be able to go ahead and do certain things or act a certain way, but then the women are the victims, right? Like, the women's are being blamed for whatever it is that happened at that time too. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's so much. I know that a lot of the stuff that we talked today is very heavy. So just a reminder for, for ourselves and to those who are going to be tuning in and listening to this, to also take a break, take a walk, drink some your favorite drink like warm tea, or like get some water, or something fresh into your system, to be able to go out and ground yourself when you continue in these listening to these conversations or these topics as well. um, and then another one is, um, does the Hmong culture produce passive individuals who willingly submit to authority and endure abuse?
I mean, if you know, yes, I talked a lot about how, again, specifically gender roles, right? It just plays down. And so it does make them, when they have to be more quiet, right? Like 差很多都菜，我都菜过，是是嘅，是是嘅那样，跟你係教我哋嘅字係教我哋，and so it does produce that. And then, again, we live in America, right? We talked a lot about how do we lead with courage in spaces that aren't built for us. And as progressive as we are today in this country, there we are also a minority group in this country, and so even in these places, um, it's really funny because I'm very vocal, and so a lot of people when they meet me, because I work in places where I'm often the only Asian, put it that way. There's not even Asian men that work in this field. And so they expect to see this very passive, meek, extremely like math talented woman. That's like what they expect from me. And then they meet me they're they're like, oh wow, like you're so different. Because I also live in Colorado where we don't have a large, Asian population here. And so I think that culturally it does. And so one of the big things that I always encourage, as a clinician is, especially as a mother now, is to have that ability to have that relationship with your child, where in a Hmong culture is very about like, back in the days we were surviving, right? Like it's all about like if there's enough food on a table, go big right? Like especially going through the war. And we're not there anymore. I tell people, we're not surviving anymore. We're thriving in this country. And so let's shift the way how we parent these days, right? Because we don't need to go out and farm. Um, we don't need all this labor anymore. How do we have relationship with our kids that is healthy? And part of that is communication, right? Like even my mom at this age, I saw her the other day and I told her I love her and I gave her a big old hug, and that was like kind of off and odd for her, but I want her to see it because that's how I am with my son. I that open communication where you talk to them. And so we do a lot of communication with our children in terms of, like I said, in my presentation, we expect the giving you a right? Like that's always the word in Hmong, like, oh, right? Like that's something to be so proud of. Or I remember my kid, we went to the restaurant and the lady's like, oh, what do you want to drink? And my kid's like, oh, like what's on the menu? And he's like 7. And my mom's like, wow, and it's really because I communicate with him and I want him to tell me how he's feeling, what he wants. I want to hear his opinion. I want to know what it is. And if for Mona, growing up with our parents is Lisako, that's a good child. And I think that we need to shift that narrative into like having a communication with them. Like, what do they like? What do they think is right or wrong? And so that we can really teach them. Again, one of my big things that I'm really huge about is like body safety, right? Their body belongs to them. And I want them to, even to their dad, to their mom, to their brother, sister, like, this is my body. And so when they go to school, when they go see anyone, they can say, this belongs to me. And start talking to them about body parts. That's something that is also culturally is we don't use these words to just describe our private parts, and if you can't even have that conversation with your child, why do you think you're that safe person for them? Why would, if you have never talked to your child, about sex, because I'm going to tell you, it's on TV, like they see people kissing in bed. They see certain things, and kids are not dumb. They don't look at that and be like, oh, they're curious. And, by 6-year-old boys, girls, when they touch themselves, it feels good. They're curious. They want to know. And it's like you want to be that person that gives them the information and let them know. And part of that is having that open communication. And so we have to not be proud that we're passive, right? That's something that Hmong people are so proud of. Oh, 你顿菜去谈到你落色，你顿菜一直都用了这几件。We're so proud of that. And we should not be proud of that because that is what keeps people in our culture, our children from generation to generation so passive and not the inability to express themselves, even to say, right? Like my kid, like, what's on a menu? You know, like we just want these kids that like, oh, my kid just wants water and like pho. And it's like, no, maybe my kid wants rice and chicken or something. And so we need to change some of this cultural practices of being proud, the culture of, you know, silence or being passive or nyatuyu or papauta. Like we have to shift that because that's how our children become victims. And then if you again you think about generational trauma, you know, it just carries down. And so that's why I talked a little bit about like uh, you know, healing through, you know, like how do we navigate healing through culture. And part of that to me is like the boundaries. You know, Annie talked about it too. Like just because you say no to a sister or you don't disagree with them, um, that's a boundary and it's okay to have one. It doesn't mean you don't love them, doesn't mean you don't care, it doesn't mean you hate them, you X them off. But it's a boundary that it's there. And it exists for a reason, and it exists so that we do not perpetuate this for the next generation. And that I think that that's something that we have to think about because we are living in a world where we're only moving forward, right? Like we're very advanced and we have to think that way.
No, thank you. I know that we had some more questions here, but I think you answered a lot of it already with a lot of the information that you had provided as well. So I don't see any questions, but I have a lot of your information. So again, anybody who's tuning in or tuned in, if you go to hmongwomanlead.com, you can find the program there, or our Facebook page with bonding, or the private group page to connect with other Hmong women as well, and their contact information is there too. So just really closing it off and just rounding everything up today. Just want to say thank you so much to Dr. Center Yang, Mindy, and Annie, for you guys coming on this year and being able to go and provide the information online in an online format this year. And quick reminder of what One Woman Lead was created for and what this is it was really like what I said earlier. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Am I the only one? Like, I can't be the only one. I'm pretty sure other folks are, you know, out there too that are doing this kind of work. And so, One Woman Lead is, I always repeat it all the time, is it's not a project, it's not an initiative. It's really more of a movement of these bold voices that are speaking things that we do need to hear, but doing so in a way to where we're still honoring our culture, we're still honoring the folks beside us. We're trying to build safer spaces for us as Hmong women to be able to go out and come together. Um, and then with the Hmong Women Mental Health Guide, it's really, we know what we need and what we want, right? We are the ones with the lived experience. We're coming to the tables, but um, a lot of the professionals, they may not have that information. They could be Hmong or non-Hmong, you know, mental health licensed professionals. And the guide is really to go ahead and provide a lot of the lived experiences and even some composite, like, you know, case studies for us to be able to go ahead and look through, for us to go and continue these conversations, right? These we may be talking about this year, and then it could blow up next year, or some new um, topic could be, you know, on the top of mind of everybody and affecting our communities in certain ways next year. Um, so we are at about 2:44 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and um, if you guys want to go ahead and look and watch the presentations, that's on a link, and then after this will be also made available too. So I think that is it, unless Mindy and Annie, you guys have any lasting ending words to say. And that is it for Mom Women Lead for 2025 as far as the summit goes. But more work still happening and continuing with a lot of the work that you guys are doing as well. So, oh, Annie, um, I know that you have one of your upcoming events too. If you want to go ahead and share that real quick as well before we end. Oh, you're
You're on
on mute.
mute.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to thank you again, Youngmi, for giving me the opportunity to come and share about Circle. I know that you and I been in Circle for like a year, and we saw the benefits of it. And so thank you for helping me amplifying the work to share with our community. So I will be hosting a virtual circle at the end of this month, and it will be again on reclaiming our voice, trusting ourselves again, trusting our intuition. Again, the work, everything I do is because we have been impacted by patriarchy that silenced us, that made us feel like we forgot, right, who we are. If you're the kind of person that not sure, your values and your voice, sometimes you're not sure where you stand, it's because you have forgotten, your some parts of you. And Circle is where we get to go and explore those and reclaim those parts again, returning to our wholeness. So through these circles, you will get to reclaim a little part of those back. And this upcoming one is really on trusting yourself again. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And so come be in community where we can all witness each other, being held, being seen, and grow together on this journey of returning to our wholeness. And there will be a fee, because I believe that in order to gain something, sometimes we do have to sacrifice something. It's an investment. However, I do offer a scale of pay what you can. Um, if you are in a situations where you want to come, but the fee is in hardship, we do also offer scholarship as well. You just email me for a coupon code. And so I offer you different choices for you to choose what best align and best speaks to your heart right now. And so explore the registration page. It's Circle with Annie/circle. Thank you for
Thank you,
allowing me to
Annie.
share.
Yes. And then I know that, Mindy, you do trainings as well, and you provide continuing education units, credits. But I'll let you provide a little bit more details about that and if anybody wants to contact you about that.
Yeah. I think, Yami, thank you for the space. This is a much needed space. And I love the different topics that we have, very different, but also very speaks to all of us as Hmong women. Um, I I do this. I've been talking, and she's always like waiting for my next big move. And I was telling Annie, you guys heard I was having a midlife crisis or whatnot. But this year, I'm kind of trying to figure out how to shift some things around so that next year I can really focus on what my passion is, which is really to provide services to the Hmong community. And so here in Colorado, I partnered with HMAC. So the folks that do the Hmong New Year, we are starting a Hmong Women's Hmong Colorado Women's Group. And it's really just to connect with young Hmong women in Colorado because there's a lot of us here, but we're also very distant. And so that is coming up for me. And part of that is really, again, to connect for us to be there. Like Annie talked a lot about that, the sister wounds, for us to really be there, hoping that one day we'll get Annie to come down here and, lead us, guide us through that. Um, I do a lot of trainings on child abuse. Uh, Child sexual abuse is something that I'm very passionate about. I do a lot of training on that. My goal and hope one day is that I can really go into Hmong communities and have these conversations on a preventative side. I'm not interested in going in when things have happened and how do you move on. I'm going to be very honest. I'm very interested in how do we prevent things like this from happening because we can, with education and with knowledge. Very about parenting and shifting the way how we can really not carry, not pass on some generational trauma. That's something that I want to shift for behind Hmong. And so that's coming up for me. Seeds for Hope is something that I'm very passionate about. Again, how do we shift this world for behind Hmong. I believe that we're very, very resilient culture, and that we've been through so much. But I also believe that if we band together and we help lift each other, we can go so far. Um, and so I am available to. I also have working on a book, working on a book about body safety, and it's going to be in Hmong and English. So a couple of things upcoming. But this is where I want to serve. This is where I want to be, is with my Hmong sisters and for the Hmong community.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and